Welcome back to the program. This is still Good Morning Kenya. If you are just joining us, you're right in time for our first conversation this morning. Our focus centered on better understanding the rights of older persons. My guest this morning is Jude Otogo, who is the Kenya Country Program Coordinator at the Helpage International. He'll be helping us understand more about older persons, perhaps even as caregivers, what exactly you need to do as a person, and holistically, what are the rights of older persons in general? That is our conversation this morning. Welcome to the program, Jude.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Even before we go to the nitty-gritties and even trying to understand about the rights of older persons, let's start from the basics. And perhaps we can begin with Helpage as an international organization. And perhaps you can start from what exactly it does and which areas it is centered and focused on when it comes to helping older persons.
Thank you very much, Doreen. I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Jude Otogo, as you rightly mentioned. I'm the country representative for Helpage International in Kenya. We are privileged today to be speaking to the nation about Helpage International, a global organization that works with like-minded organizations to advance rights and well-being of older persons, not just in Kenya, not just in Africa, but globally. Globally, we have 156 network members with whom we work, present in 85 countries. In Kenya, of course, again, we work through network members. We have quite a number. Karika, we have Aging Concern Foundation, we have Kibra Daycare for the Elderly, we have MyCop, and many others. Helpage International actually was formed by a number of organizations, and Helpage Kenya was among the pioneer organizations that came together with others, including Helpage India, to form Helpage International. The focus of Helpage International is really advancing the rights and well-being of older persons. Our vision is to see a world where every older person says, I have the best possible health, I have the money I need to meet my basic needs, I live in a secure environment, and my voice is heard. What do we mean when we say the best possible health? We know definitely as we age, a number of health conditions do affect us, especially the non-communicable diseases. But that's not to say that when one has a non-communicable disease that is chronic, they cannot enjoy life. They should be able to experience healthy aging. And for us, healthy aging is ability for individuals to be and do that which they value and love to do. Things like making relationships, things like learning and being able to make decisions, making a contribution in society, and ability to move around. That's what every one of us would like to do when we get the age of 60, which is the global and Kenyan definition of an older person. In terms of the income that we need, of course, we know at 60 we are retiring. That doesn't mean that our needs for health care, for shelter, for food, and others cease. No, we still need money to meet those basic needs. We should also be able to contribute to what happens in society, make a meaningful contribution. Our voices should be heard, for example, in the constitution-making process, in the political processes, and others. That's why we really focus on amplifying the voice of older persons as Helpage International. And finally, for Kenya, we are focusing on 4 programming areas. The first one is healthy aging. The second is violence, abuse, and neglect. And then we have social protection, and finally we have voice, which is amplifying older people's voice. That's what Helpage does. And in terms of the way we deliver our programs, we work through partners and network members. For example, in the area of healthy aging, we work with the Ministry of Health to strengthen health systems. If you look at our health systems, they are very well established in dealing with health issues of other population cohorts. For example, you'll find programs for younger children, you'll find programs for women, you'll find programs for the youth and adolescents, but come to older persons, I'm sure you may not be able to cite any that specifically focuses for older persons.
Yeah.
So we try and work with the Ministry of Health, strengthen health systems, ensure that we have a well-trained and capacitated workforce to be able to deal with the specific health needs of older persons, to ensure that there are policies in place that support programming, to ensure that we have a health management information system that can provide both longitudinal and cross-sectional data to inform planning, budgeting, and all those decisions. Similarly, for social protection, again, we work with the Ministry of Labour and Social Protection just to be sure that the social protection programs that we have in the country, for example, the Inua Jamii 70+, which is a universal pension scheme, is responsive to the needs of older persons, that older persons have easy access to the fund, and of course, it is really taking into account the fact that we are dealing with a unique population. In terms of violence, abuse, and neglect, and probably before I get there, I just want to convey my personal condolences to the families of the older women that were lynched in Kisii about 2 weeks ago. That was very unfortunate. That happened, but that was a very extreme, a truly extreme form of violence against older persons. We do condemn it. Violence, abuse, neglect of older persons is illegal. It's not right, it's not fair.
All right, and perhaps you can also, we'll come to that as you continue to build up on the conversation, sometimes to also try and understand how culture has also resulted to this neglect of older persons, because some would say it's a result of witchcraft. Why do they even need to stay alive? Some would say, why are we putting and channeling all our energies, resources to these older persons and let them just stay in the village? So there's a lot of also culture inclination to how we neglect or how we take care of these older persons. But perhaps to also just come back a bit, and this in regards to also trying to understand what Helpage is doing, and you really expounded that, and that is a good just expansion to try and also make us understand what Helpage as a foundation or a global international network is doing. But perhaps let's try and track the progress, because these 5 organizations that you're talking about came about together in 1983, if my memory serves me correct?
Correct.
Okay. And they are 5 organizations who came together to form the international network. And just the way we were having this convo off air, and we were saying sometimes we don't really see the need of having homes and foundations for older persons, because why are we putting so much resources on them? But perhaps if you make us understand the progress they are in since that time, and even when it came to Kenya, the progress that has been made in helping these older persons, maybe we can see the importance of having such either homes, structures, or even specific areas and places to keep older persons.
Population aging was recognized first probably as early as 2002 during the Madrid International Plan of Action on Aging. That's when it was noted that the population of older persons is increasing and increasing rapidly. For example, just to cite the Kenyan case, in 1949 we only had about 270,000 older persons. Today we have in excess of 3 million older persons in this country, aged 60 and above. And as population ages, there are challenges but also opportunities that come with that aging. And one of those issues were really around the need for health. Because of the demographic changes, the health needs of older persons will change. Whereas initially we had communicable diseases as the main problem, we had a transition into non-communicable diseases. These are conditions that are long-term. They are chronic and they require care over time. So to be able to provide care under such circumstances, then it was necessary to just put in place mechanisms and structures to support older persons as they face those non-communicable disease conditions. That's why That's why we had long-term care systems, which are not currently very well established in our setting, to take care of those whose functional abilities have declined with age. Okay, it all was working well then when the social fabric, the traditional structure, was functioning, because then would have young women taking care of the elderly, mostly young women taking care of the elderly. But today, people are seeking opportunities, academic opportunities, career opportunities, economic opportunities out there. So the social fabric is kind of, affected. And that therefore necessitates establishment of homes on the extreme, although we advocate for aging in place. That is, let this older person live in their natural environment, their home as they age. But because of what I just mentioned, people seeking opportunities, the social fabric breaking down, the rural-urban migration and all those issues, then the need for care homes is necessary, long-term care systems is necessary. That is very well advanced in the West. But here in Africa and in Kenya, there isn't much of that. And so, considering also that there has been an increase in older persons abuse in this country and the world over, the government is now working with the institutions, organizations to set up rescue homes where those that are abused or at risk of being abused are rescued and taken care of. The other aspect that has made Helpage remain relevant is the fact that as people age, they lose their livelihoods, source of livelihoods, through mandatory retirement. In fact, that's actually a form of abuse. It's a form of ageism by discriminating older persons when it comes to employment on the basis of their age. We know very well that people age 60 and above can still be very productive.
But someone will argue perhaps at that point in time in their life, they're not as energetic and cannot be productive. So why am I keeping them in employment or a job?
I'll ask you to sample some of the constitutional offices in this country. Who are our senior judges? They are all aged over 60. And look at chairmen of boards, chief executives, our legislators, and others. They are people aged 60 and above.
So that's why it becomes a form of abuse.
Yes. Actually, it is ageism, prejudices, stereotyping, and discrimination on a simple basis of age. That I cannot go back to school when I'm 60 and earn a PhD. Says who? Having said that, it's still possible to engage older persons meaningfully. For example, if somebody has been an accountant, they may not be able to work 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, but they could be engaged, say, for 2-3 days, 2-3 hours a day. If they're a teacher, they can still volunteer. Some of them may not even require pay, but in just knowing that they are making a positive contribution in society, that keeps them healthy and they live longer. How I wish society could appreciate that fact.
And that's why you are here, to also make us understand the importance and how we can help protect the rights of older persons. So just before we come to those rights, let's also try and demystify and expound more on these abuses, because from what you've mentioned, especially when it comes to that ageism, and you really elaborated that very much well, because you can still have some of them even at that age as productive, and maybe if they're not as productive as enough, we can try and engage them perhaps for 2 or 3 days instead of the 5 or 7 or 6 days. So what other forms of abuse are there existing when it comes to older persons before we get to their rights?
There are various forms of abuse. Unfortunately, we have normalized abuse in society. And abuse here refers to a single repeated act of either neglect or actions from persons in a trusted relationship that goes against that trust. We have physical forms of abuse, slapping an older person to instill discipline or make them respond because they are too slow, or make them take their medicine or eat. That's physical abuse. We have sexual abuse. We have had cases of older women sexually abused in this country, even in the media. The other form of abuse is psychological abuse, probably through insults, treating them badly. Financial abuse is quite common. For example, if an older person had to do a transaction on their mobile phone, and they trust their caregiver or a family member to do it for them, or even go to the bank and withdraw money from an ATM, they choose to withhold part of that money as service charge. For the work I've done for you, I'm keeping 200 shillings out of the 2,000 that I went and withdrew for you. That's financial abuse. Neglect, again, is a form of abuse. It's expected that we take care of the weak, the sick, probably mentally disturbed older persons, but then we neglect the role. That's a form of abuse. Abandonment. How many of us leave our parents back in the village, alone in the house, confined? That's also a form of abuse. So we have like 7 forms of abuse that our older persons go through. Unfortunately, we have normalized elder abuse and sanitized it by saying they are too old, so we are just urging them to be a little faster. They couldn't hold their pee or urine. They soiled their clothes, not knowing that it is the aging process that makes them get to that, and it's a medical condition that probably requires attention. Pushing them around, they are too slow. There are lots of this, and there is individual abuse, but there's also institutional abuse. What do I mean by this? Consider, for example, that our parliament is meant to ratify the Africa Union Protocol on the Rights of Older Persons, and they don't do it. Yet that protocol contains what is necessary to protect, promote, and preserve the rights of older persons. That's an institutional abuse to the older persons. When society is just watching an older person being lynched, being assaulted, that is institutional abuse.
Or a simple thing as they're trying to cruise from one side of the road and you're thinking, just try and help yourself. Why am I even here trying to help you?
Exactly.
Okay.
That's neglect.
That makes
a lot of sense. Which is a form of abuse.
All right, let's talk about their rights now, because it's one thing to have a conversation on the rights of older persons, but do these older persons even understand what their rights are? For instance, when you talk about rights of women or rights of children, they have a good understanding of what my right as a woman is. What about them?
Older persons, I believe, do understand their rights, but they have not been given a voice to speak out about their rights. Society knows very well what rights older persons hold. Our own constitution very clearly defines rights of older persons. We have a national policy on older persons and aging, whose 6th goal is protecting older persons from abuse. So rights of older persons are rights of any human being, irrespective of age. Our rights are the same. The universal rights and freedoms are same. They do not decline with age. The fact that I've become 60 does not mean that my right to life is curtailed. My right to freedom of speech is curtailed. My right to the best possible level of health is curtailed. Protection of my property is curtailed. No. So rights of older persons are universal and they are human rights. They do not by any means decline simply because we've attained the age of 60. Okay,
that makes sense. I know this is not a political show, but I just want to pick your mind in respect to perhaps even how our politicians behave, because there's a time we actually had these conversations on older persons, and the guest we had, we're just trying to have this conversation, trying to perhaps establish when it comes to even respecting and how we take older people, do our politicians play a part? And this is the analogy I'm trying to paint. When you look at political rallies, when they are giving out policies, it's always, we'll do this for the youth, we'll create employment, we'll create jobs, we'll have this fund that will go into helping a thing or two when it comes to the youth. When it comes to the women, we'll have various kinds of structures that will at least help women come up. But we rarely, I've not even heard myself, that we will do this for older people. Maybe we'll try and have homes that will take care of older persons. Do you think that also that plays a part in how we treat older persons?
I wish they knew.
That's why you're here, to make us understand.
That older persons are by 2019, we had 2.7 million older persons in this country. Okay? The 2.7 older persons are all eligible voters. So if a politician...
And now we're talking about voter listing.
If a politician just got the vote of these 3 million older persons, they would probably have 50% of what they need to make it to the presidency. Anyway, that aside, I think I want to agree with you to a great extent that attention has not been paid to this population cohort. Again, because of the stereotyping that once somebody is 60 and above, they are spent forces, which is not the case. They are not spent forces. If our politicians were serious about older persons, then we wouldn't be, I wouldn't be sitting here today exhorting our parliament to ratify or pass the African Union Protocol on the rights of older persons, which guarantees rights and entitlements and freedoms of older persons. Once that is ratified and domesticated, then the abuses older persons are experiencing, the neglect, the discrimination won't be the case. So you are right in saying that our politicians have probably not taken older persons seriously. And just a case in point, it's barely 2 weeks since the Kisii incident happened. No politician has come out to condemn the act. Not even the local politicians from the community where these older women were lynched. Not even the cabinet secretary for the ministry that hosts the older persons. Not the minister, the cabinet secretary for internal security or interior has condemned this. What does it mean? Would it be the same case if it was a vibrant officer, government officer in their 30s, in their 20s, their 40s that was lynched without any good reason? Wouldn't they? Wouldn't the politicians speak out and condemn the act? So that is the ageism that I'm talking about, where because these are older people, they are not worth to live.
Why are we having this conversation about them? Sometimes, that's the notion you're trying to make us see, that this is why they don't even talk about that, because, they're older people, so why is it even making headlines? Why are we talking about it? All right, Jude, let's take just a short break. We'll return to try and expound more on that when we come back after this very short break, so stay with us. Back, and thank you so much for staying with us. We still continue with what we are conversing on before we went on that break. That is trying to understand the rights of older persons. And my guest is still with me on set. That is Jude Otogo, who is helping us with trying to better understand on that. Jude, before we went on break, you're talking about perhaps what our political leaders need to be doing, and you are tying that with also what happened in Kisii just about 2 weeks ago, and also what has been happening in various parts of the country when it comes to killing or lynching of these older persons. And we hear no political figure talking about this, as opposed to when some young people are killed, as a result of police brutality or any form of killing, there's a quick response. But when it comes to older persons, why are we taking time to talk about that?
It boils down to ageism. It looks like older persons are already condemned to end of life, they no longer matter. But that's not true, as I explained in our conversation earlier. Kisii is just, the Kisii incident is just tip of the iceberg. This has been ongoing. It's only that it's not been reported. We have reports that it's also happening in that parts of the country. For example, we have an association in Malindi, the Malindi District Cultural Association, MADCA, which has a record of all older persons that have been killed since the year 2013 or 2014. And this is, it has a record of about 400 older persons killed in less than 10 years. That comes to about 40 to 50 people per year lynched by young people on the behest of witchcraft. But witchcraft is just being used as an excuse. This is really an issue that surrounds property inheritance.
So it has nothing to do with witchcraft, much as what we also hear on the news.
Is witchcraft a preserve of older persons?
Of course not.
Yeah. You now understand where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
That someone is using witchcraft as an excuse to eliminate older persons, to have access to their property, to their land. Probably it's a wider societal issue, because from the conversations and dialogue that you've had with these communities, especially in Kilifi, they claim that older persons are killed, so then the younger people have an opportunity to grab the land, sell it, get a border to ride, a motorbike to ride for a border business, or a smartphone, and it is tied to the poverty levels as well. Here you have a young person who probably did not go beyond a primary school or dropped somewhere along the way in high school. They don't have a job. They would like to lead some flashy life. And here is an older woman that is owning 2, 3, 4, 5 acres, where they could easily lay their hands on, sell and make some money and live the kind of life they want to live. It is so absurd that during our conversations with the older people there, we couldn't help noticing older women all having pitch black hair. They dye their hair because if spotted with gray hair, then they are branded witches and killed. At least there's an association of people in Malindi that has come together to put up a rescue home for those that are under threats or at risk of being lynched. And that is something that our government should be looking at and probably supporting that small group to establish a more elaborate home for those older persons. The case is no different from Kisii. Again, it's always around land. If you go into depth, you'll realize that there is some element of property that was left behind when the husband passed on, and now someone wants to grab that land, given the scarcity of land in Gusii land. So what I would like to urge, or the challenge I would like to throw to our leaders, politicians specifically, that they still have the responsibility for the rights and well-being of older persons in this country. The least they can do for the more than 3 million older persons in this country is ratify the Africa Union Protocol on the rights of older persons, have the laws domesticated in Kenya, then older persons' well-being, rights, and property will be safeguarded. That's my challenge to our leaders, specifically politicians. Looking at the case in Kisii, it's a case that happened during broad daylight. Is it possible that no member of the community noticed young men mobilize themselves to commit this crime? Why didn't anyone at all report, summon the security apparatus? We have a very elaborate security ecosystem. We have the village elders, we have the assistant chiefs, we have the chiefs, we have the nyumba kumi, we have the community policing, we have the police force itself. How come nobody took action? Do you now realize why I say that we have normalized abuse of older persons?
Yeah.
If it can happen in broad daylight and nobody raises an alarm, nobody intervenes, nobody condemns it. And talking about culture, I think traditionally it was the role of the young people to protect the weaker, older people. The reverse is happening. The very people that are meant to protect older persons are the ones that are meeting violence against them, killing them.
But yet, even as you talk about poverty, I'm inclined to think that also that is sort of tied with greed. Don't you think?
True. But if the system probably does not provide opportunities to get out of that poverty,
it will be a cycle.
It will be a cycle.
Okay.
That we cannot do much about. Yeah.
Wow. So that means that there's a lot that needs to go into play. Okay, let's talk about the pension scheme, because it's also one of the things that you even do at Helpage, and this is. If I can remember well, that was in 2018 when you had begun this initiative, and the question was in its implementation, because perhaps it will go a long way in assisting the older persons. How is that implementation plan?
Well, so far, I think we should be grateful and give credit where it's due. This was a presidential decree.
Yeah.
Yeah. That every older person will be entitled to 2,000 shillings in pension per month.
Yeah.
And along with that, they had also to enjoy a complimentary NHIF cover just to meet their health needs. So far, it has worked well. We have about 833,000 older persons out of a possible or eligible 1.2 million enjoying the universal pension. About 400,000 are not enrolled, and understandably, because we do not have adequate resources to cover the 400,000. But both you and I know there is more to that than just lack of funds. The area that has struggled is the complementary NHIF cover. Only about 43 or so, at least from statistics that we get from the Ministry of Labour, only about 42 or thereabout have NHIF cover. And whether it's an issue of money or an implementation framework or modality is not clear yet. But we are working very closely with the Ministry of Labour and Social Protection to see how we can also have social medical insurance for the older persons. So generally it has worked well, but the adequacy is the issue. Just how much can one do with 2,000 shillings a month?
That's also
pay rent,
question.
get clothes, buy food, pay for medicine. Which one? So it would be great if that figure could be increased, probably to more than just $1 a day, which would translate to about 3,300 shillings a month.
When you look at that figure, Jude, of 2,000 a month, well, you said let's give credit to where credit is due. At least it's something as compared to nothing. But do you, from your perspective, do you feel that perhaps what informed the 2,000 is because, I mean, older people live in villages, so what do you need more money for?
True, majority of older persons live in villages. But quite a proportion also live in town where they have to pay rents and you know, other utilities.
Basic needs.
Yeah, basic needs. For example, I think the sub-counties of Dagoretti and Kibra host more than 15,000 older persons.
Yeah.
That's urban area. We have those expenses. But even back home, I mean, we still have needs, irrespective of where we are. It may not necessarily be rental money, but yes, one has to buy food, one has to pay for medication, one has to move around. So it's still inadequate either way, whether it's in the rural setting or the urban setting. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about caregivers, because it's actually the caregivers who take care of these older persons. That's why they're called caregivers. When you even talk about the rights of older persons and how they need to be taken care of, do these caregivers understand the right of older persons? And perhaps do you have initiatives that sensitize them, or do you think we need to do more in respect to that for them to understand? Because I want to believe that if you are coming from a point of knowledge, it will be easier for you to understand what and why you're doing what you're doing.
Caregivers. Traditionally, we had caregivers that assumed the role intuitively. You know, that because I've lived in this home with this older person, now they are not able to do lots of things for themselves. I take the responsibility to care for them. The truth is, we have not really developed the long-term care system, which among other things should include long-term caregivers who should be able to meet the needs of older persons in terms of health, in terms of their psychological health, physical, psychological health, but also meet social and other needs of these older persons. Okay, we do not have yet a curriculum or a specific mechanism to build the capacity of these caregivers. What we are doing as Helpage at the moment is adopting the World Health Organization integrated care for older people. And this does not just look at health aspects, no. It looks at the older person holistically, yeah? Such that if we have a caregiver, a long-term care provider, they are taking care of an older person as a holistic being, not just looking at the aspects of health alone. We have older people's homes, mostly established by the church, few by county government of Nairobi, I think, and most recently a rescue home in Kirinyaga by the national government. We have guidelines that were jointly developed between the Ministry of Labour and Social Protection and Helpage International, just to provide the bare basics to give older persons decent care in their old age.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that makes sense. You also have a good number of your works being done, especially in the northern part of the country, northern Kenya. What is so peculiar about that area of the country? I mean, older persons exist everywhere in Kenya. What is peculiar about the northern part of the country?
True. We have a belief that there is no typical older person. The needs of the older persons in the northern part of the country are unique in a way. For example, these pastoralist communities, and from time to time, the younger members of society will move with their livestock in search of water, in search of pastures and all that. And because the older person is most likely to be frail, they'll be left behind. It is that unique need and their frailty that motivates us to give support. At least that they are not left, quote unquote, to die when the younger members of the family are going out. Currently in Turkana and Marsabit, we are providing a little financial support in response to the droughts in those two counties. We hope that it will go a long way in supporting the older persons who may not be able to trek long distances looking for water, looking for food. Yeah.
So it's just because of the circumstance surrounding that part of the country, and perhaps those things that they do in terms of economic activity, maybe being pastoralists, that means there's so much on the go and the move. So it leaves older persons
behind.
Okay.
But I would also like to mention that we do program across the country. For example, we have been at the forefront in supporting the COVID-19 vaccination in a number of counties. We see Kisumu, Narok, even Nairobi. Because again, you look at the initial approach to vaccination was facility-based. And taking, for example, Nairobi, you can imagine you want an older person to travel from their residence to town using a matatu.
Yeah.
How suitable is that means of transport for them to even get to the facility?
True.
That alone will create a vaccine hesitancy. So based on that, we partnered with the Ministry of Health different levels to carry out outreach vaccination services targeting the older persons, because again they are the most vulnerable and at increased risk of contracting and suffering severe forms of the pandemic. So that we are doing across the country. We are programming on social protection in Kibra, Dagoretti, and Dagoretti North and South. And through our network members, we are literally dotted everywhere in this country. But above all, we strive to influence policy, to be more aligned, more supportive of healthy aging in this country. So we support government, review policies, develop policies, train service providers, just that we have the best possible service for these older persons in the country.
Jude, you've mentioned something, and I think this cuts across in every area. And maybe, let me also just pick your mind on that, because when you talk about policies, I don't know, do you feel like, or do you think, is it always a question of policies or implementations? Because we always have good ideas, and we'll always write them down. We'll always debate and discuss them. Where do we miss the point?
We have good policies.
Oh yeah, sure.
They may not be in every area, but we honestly have good policies in this country. I picked the national policy on older persons and aging in Kenya, whose sixth goal is protecting older persons from abuse. Protecting older persons from abuse. But despite having such policy in place, you can see what's happening. Abuse are happening. So it's really a matter of implementation, but also enforcement of those policies. I think that's where we miss the point. We have very well written policies that our most intellectually endowed policymakers have spent time, it has all been expense developing these policies, but when it comes to implementation and enforcement, I think we have a lot of work to do in that area.
We have a lot of work to do.
Yes.
Okay, finally, as we bring this conversation to a close, Jude, with all that we've said, clearly looks like we have a lot of work to do when it comes to help protecting the rights of older persons. What would you say to basically the society? Because I tend to feel that it starts with you and I when it comes to even ensuring that what we talk about in terms of helping protect their rights is actually a reality and not just a conversation.
First of all of us are headed there.
Whether we like it or not.
We don't have a choice. At one point in 10, 20, 30 years, we shall be there. And when we get there, it will be important that we have systems and structures that are supportive of healthy aging. My appeal to society is that let's appreciate aging as a natural process. A natural process that we should prepare for by taking actions that will inform better experience when we get at that point. Making the right choices in terms of exercising, in terms of what we consume, in terms of just checking on our health generally, in terms of even saving for for old age.
Yeah.
Secondly, traditionally, it was the responsibility of the stronger members of society to take care of the older ones. Let's just do that. This is a call to our younger people. Our traditions, our culture calls us to be responsible for the safety, for the protection of the older ones. Let's not be the ones to abuse them. Over to the leadership. We have good policies, but there are more that should be put in place. Let our parliament expedite ratification of the African Union Protocol and have the instrument deposited with the African Union and domesticate those within our laws, implement them and enforce them.
Well said, well said. We clearly have a lot that we need to do as a society, as a people, as a government, in all aspects, right?
True.
All right. Okay, so that is where we bring this conversation to a close. We were talking about the rights of older persons. Jude Otogo, Kenya Country Program Coordinator, Helpage International, has been our guest, trying to help us understand more about that and what we can do as a people, as a society, and even as a nation at large. We still have plenty more on the other side of this break, so stay with us.